Hey everybody, I'm Ryan. Today we're going to be looking at the modern metagame for the last week on Magic Online. Now this is the first metagame check that I've done on Modern since the Yorion ban. So let's see if there are any irregularities or changes for the Modern metagame. Jump right into it. So this is the metagame of 4-0s in prelims, 5-0s in dailies, and top 32s in challenges / showcase challenges. I decided to make any deck that had 1 or 2 appearances in the other category, and any deck that had 3 or more appearances to be listed on its own. So you'll notice that at the very top, the most popular deck is Rhinos at 7.5% of the meta. Following, tied in second and third, is Murktide and Red-Black Scam. So we'll talk about those decks in just a second. But you'll also notice that the fourth most popular deck is 4-color Omnath at 4.5%. This is a little surprising to me right off the top because you'd think the banning of a card in a deck would make it worse. So there are 2 things that I think might be happening here. Number one, and probably the more simple solution, is that people are trying to figure out if the deck is any good without Yorion. And it obviously is still a playable deck without Yorion, but that might be an abnormally high number in the metagame because people are just like trying out the new version of the deck. The less likely reason, but still possible reason, is that by reducing the number of cards in the deck, it accidentally made the deck better and people were just playing Yorion because they were greedy. Which, being able to cut the chaff and just play the good cards might be valuable for the deck. I am not 100% sure. But let's look at these top 3 decks really quick. So this Rhinos deck is essentially a mid-range deck. It plays removal spells and counter spells, but is centered around playing a Shardless Agent or a Violent Outburst, and then cascading into Crashing Footfalls to get 3 mana, 2 4/4 Trampoline Rhinos, and then support that with other spells like Fury and Force of Negation and other removal spells, etc., etc. This is a pretty awesome tempo deck. It removes what it needs to, and then just like has a lot of power on the board very early and just kills the opponent. This deck has gone through a lot of iterations. Actually, itself had a Yorion version of the deck at one point, but I guess with the Yorion ban, this is now the best version. Now, Murktide is the premier fair deck of the format. It's kind of the Delver deck of the format. It plays cheap threats, including the possibility of a 2-mana 8/8 flyer in Murktide Regent. Plays many cheap spells and cantrips to cycle through the deck as fast as possible, or protects their cheap aggressive creatures with counter magic, and rides on the back of Ragavan to victory. And then Red-Black Scam, which in my estimation is the most frustrating deck to play against, plays a bunch of unfair stuff in the shell of a red-black mid-range deck. So playing unfair cards like Ragavan, Dalthi Voidwalker, having the ability to play cards for free and things get exiled when you play it is awesome as creativity becomes more popular. Just generally good mid-range cards and Seasoned Pyromancer. Removal spells like playing early Blood Moons, playing great cards like Fable of the Mirror Breaker, but the big unfairness that can happen in the deck is evoking Grief or Fury, and then either Feign Death or Undying Malice. Some of the decks are playing other versions of the cards that basically say the same thing. And if you do it with Grief, being able to Thoughtseize your opponent twice, and then having a 4-power menace creature on the battlefield on turn 1, or with Fury, having a 4-power double striker on the battlefield on turn 1. Not a lot of decks can deal with that right off. So it just gets a lot of cheap wins through Blood Moon, through that combo, through Dalthi Voidwalker, through Ragavan, and can be very frustrating to play against because when you lose against it, you lose very, very hard and it doesn't feel like you got to play Magic. Just like when you win with it, it feels like you're a master. So that's the modern metagame, the overall metagame, what decks you can expect. But what decks were successful in the previous week? So here we have a lot of different decks that put 1 copy in the top 8 of the 2 premier events, the Challenge and the Showdown Challenge this past weekend. But there are 2 decks that put multiple. One of those is Murktide, which is not surprising, that put 3 decks in the top 8. But the other one that put 2 decks in the top 8, which is not really on our radar as far as the metagame goes, is Burn. Burn put 2 decks in the top 8. So let's look at an example of the Burn deck. So the Burn deck is exactly what you think it is. Plays aggressive creatures and plays burn spells. It is doing its best to not interact with its opponent at all, besides through Searing Blaze. And it's trying to deal 20 damage to the opponent. The biggest thing with the Burn deck is it is built to deal 20 damage, period. If the opponent interacts much or counters the right spell or two or gains the right amount of life, the burn deck peters out pretty quickly. But it seems like there are some people that ran pretty hot with this deck, and it had a great showing this past weekend. Now, what I always do with these metagame breakdowns after we analyze the stuff is look and see if there are any decks that catch my eye. And there was this past week. And that deck that caught my eye is the 5-color Domain Zoo deck. So this 5-color Domain Zoo deck, Domain Zoo decks have been around for a while, just abusing cards like Tribal Flames and playing cards that have more power because you're playing a bunch of different basic lands, or just playing really high value crazy cards like Ragavan. But it got a new toy recently in Leyline Binding, having a 1-mana flash O-Ring that can just like take out any opposing creature whenever it wants, along with a more recent toy in Scion of Draco or Neshoba Brawler, has really pushed this deck over the top, I think. And even though it didn't have a lot of success this past weekend, I would really keep my eye on this deck moving forward, and I'm really excited to run this through a few leagues to see if it's any good. Well, there you have it, the modern metagame. If there's any other way you'd like me to analyze the modern metagame moving forward, please let me know in the comments. If you like videos like this and want me to do more, please like and subscribe. Check me out on my social medias. Links are above me and in the description. I really appreciate it. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.